Shalom Avram, James Trim here. We have 22 of the 27 books of the New Testament in a version called the Peshitta. And we have another earlier version called the Old Syriac for the four Gospels. But is Syriac the wrong kind of Aramaic? We'll talk about that in a minute. But first I need to ask you to please donate to support this work. Our rent is due today, and right now we don't have it. So if you can possibly donate today, that would be really helpful. For those that don't know, my wife is chronically ill. She suffers chronic pain. She's disabled, and I am her caretaker here at home. And also, you're supporting the great work that we're doing here on things like Hebrew and Aramaic origins of the New Testament and the Jewish character of the New Testament. Okay, you can donate by clicking on the donate link in the video description or sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org. Also, I want to ask everybody to please like the video, to click on the to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell. Let us know what you think in the comments and participate in the discussions in the comments. All these things are things that the YouTube algorithm looks at to decide which videos to recommend to new viewers, and we want to get recommended to new viewers. Also, share these videos with your friends on social media, on Facebook, on related Facebook groups, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and anywhere else you participate in social media, and just email them to your friends and so on, and in private messages to your friends. Okay, so let's get going here. We have a version of the New Testament known as the Peshitta. There's actually an entire Peshitta Bible. There's a Peshitta Old Testament, and there's a Peshitta New Testament. The Peshitta New Testament follows the Eastern canon of the Assyrian Orthodox Church of the East, the Holy Assyrian Catholic Church of the East, the Holy Assyrian Apostolic Church of the East, I think that's what it's called. It's generally just called the Church of the East, the Nestorians, and they originally followed the 22-book canon. The 22-book canon that is the Peshitta canon does not include 2nd Kepha or 2nd Peter, 2nd and 3rd Yochanan or 2nd and 3rd John, Jude or Yehuda, and it doesn't include the book of Revelation. So it's missing those 5 books. We can talk about that more on another occasion, but the Peshitta is also written in an Aramaic dialect called Syriac. The Peshitta is the version that is used by Christians in the East. All kinds of Christians in the East. The Maronites, the Nestorians, the Jacobites, or by their names of the Syrian Orthodox Church and the Holy Apostolic Catholic Church of the East. Also the Chaldean Orthodox Church, which is actually a branch of the Roman Catholic Church. They use the Syrian Christians of Malabar, India, the so-called St. Thomas Christians. They use the Peshitta, and many of these branches recognize the Peshitta as the original Aramaic text. Now, I will add here that the Peshitta appears to actually be a revision of an older version called the Old Syriac. The Old Syriac version is a version that is lost, except that we have the 2 manuscripts of the 4 Gospels. Both of those manuscripts are missing a lot of pages, but between the 2 of them we have 95% of the Gospels in this version, but it's still Syriac Aramaic. Now, what is the problem with that? Well, critics have pointed out, critics have said, this is not the right dialect of Aramaic. It's not a Jewish dialect. It's the Edessan dialect. It was used by Syrians. of the time period, but it was not used by by Jews. So if we're looking for a Jewish Aramaic version of the so-called New Testament that is either an original or a Aramaic translation, a literal Aramaic translation of Hebrew originals. In either case, the Peshitta is and the Old Syriac are in the wrong dialect of Aramaic to be that text. Now, some have simply dismissed the Peshitta and the Old Syriac from the question of New Testament origins, and because they are the wrong dialect. But there is something very interesting, and that is that both the Peshitta and the Old Syriac, but especially the Old Syriac has a lot of internal evidence, a lot of internal issues where the text at times departs from normal Syriac Aramaic and has characteristics of Jewish Aramaic and Western Aramaic. So the dialects of Aramaic can be divided widely into two major dialect groupings. There's Western Aramaic and there's Eastern Aramaic. There are Jewish dialects of each. The Babylonian Talmud, for example, is written in an Eastern dialect, whereas the most of the Targums, some of the Targums at least, and the Jerusalem Talmud are written in a Western dialect of Aramaic. And the Aramaic of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's a Western dialect of Aramaic. Okay, so what's really interesting is that there are a lot of places where, in the Old Syriac particularly, the Syriac Aramaic of the Old Syriac version has, instead of reading in Eastern Aramaic, it has characteristics that are unique to Western Aramaic and to frequently to Jewish Western Aramaic. So let's look at a few examples. In Matthew chapter 3, verse 4, we read, "And the same Yochanan had the raiment of camel's hair and a leather girdle about his loins, and his meat," or his food, "was locusts and wild honey." And the Aramaic of the Old Syriac says honey of the open country, if you will. Well, the word for open country here in the Aramaic is Turah. And Turah in Aramaic usually means mountains, or a mountain, but sometimes can refer to, in Western Aramaic, can refer to open country. In Eastern Aramaic, it always means a mountain, but in Western Aramaic, it can refer to wide open country, to a field. Okay, and we see this, for example, in the Jerusalem Talmud. I take that back. We don't see it in the Jerusalem Talmud, but we do see it in the usage in Palestinian Aramaic. Now, when I say Palestinian Aramaic, I refer to the academic geographic term, not to some Palestinian state which never existed, but to a dialect of Aramaic that was used in the Holy Land. A Western dialect of Aramaic. Okay, let's look at another passage. Let's look at Luke chapter 12, verse 28, which refers to the grass of the open country that today is in the open country. It's Turah, again, in the Old Syriac. Now, in both of these, as I said, in Syriac, Turah means a mountain. And in Western, that's in Eastern Aramaic and in Syriac Aramaic. But in Western Aramaic, and in so-called Palestinian Aramaic that was used in the Holy Land, the word can refer to a mountain, or it can refer to an open field or open country. So the grass of that today is in the open country. Now, both of these cases, the Peshitta translates differently with a different word for wilderness in Matthew 3:4 and for a field in Luke 12:28. The Peshitta uses different appropriate Syriac words, but the Old Syriac uses this word Turah, which normally in Syriac would mean mountain and be inappropriate. So in Luke chapter 2, verse 14, when the angels announcing the Messiah's coming say peace on earth and goodwill to men, the word for goodwill there in the Old Syriac Aramaic is araota. This is a word that is not good Syriac at all. In fact, the Peshitta translates it with two different words meaning goodwill. Okay, but the Aramaic of the Old Syriac follows Western Jewish Aramaic. This is the same Aramaic word, by the way, or a form of the same Aramaic word that we see in the Aramaic portions of Ezra. Yes, portions of the Tanakh were written in Aramaic, not Hebrew. And those were a couple of portions of Ezra and a large portion of the book of Daniel. Okay, so people that are concerned that maybe portions of the New Testament could have been written in Aramaic rather than Hebrew because the Tanakh was written in Hebrew, miss the point. The Tanakh was written in Hebrew and Aramaic, and if portions of the Tanakh were written in Aramaic, why not also portions of the New Testament? But at any rate, in Ezra 5:7 and in Ezra 8:18, this Aramaic word appears. Okay, so intolerable is this Aramaic word to Syriac Aramaic that in the Syriac Peshitta version of the book of Ezra, this Aramaic word gets translated with a different Syriac word for goodwill to replace it. And what's especially interesting is that this word in Jewish Aramaic is used to refer to proclamation of festivals. In the Babylonian Talmud, for example, in Baba Batra 113b, it's used in just that way. And in the Targums, it's used for festival benedictions for Jewish festivals. This is very remarkable because there is a strong parallel between the words that are spoken by the angels making this announcement and the Sukkot liturgy, which ties in with the idea that the Messiah was actually born at Sukkot. Luke chapter 11, verse 10, and in Luke chapter 13, verse 25, the word for knock is in the Peshitta nakash. Nakash is the proper Syriac word to use here. However, the Old Syriac version uses makash, starting in English with an M if you were writing it in English letters, whereas in Syriac it should start with an N, like in Nancy, or a noon in Hebrew/Aramaic letters, and a mem in Hebrew and Aramaic letters. This is such bad Syriac. It's not even a word in Syriac that in Burkitt's translation, his publication and his translation of the Old Syriac that he did in the 19th century, in the footnotes he gives this Makash reading that appears in the Old Syriac in a marginal note, and in the marginal note he has SIC, S-I-C next to it. For those that don't know, that's a scholarly term meaning I am repeating the error that was in the original material that I had. So he saw it as an error, okay? In fact, it's perfectly proper perfectly proper Jewish Western Aramaic. You see, in Syriac Aramaic, this verb normally appears in the what we call the Pe'el form. In the Pe'el form, it's Nakash, Nun, Kuf, Shin. Okay? However, in Western Jewish Aramaic, it appears in the Afel form and is spelled with a mem instead of a nun. So this isn't just some kind of a misspelling, as Burkitt thought, in the manuscript. It's actually good Jewish Aramaic. We actually see it used in Tractate Gittin in the Jerusalem Talmud, chapter 3, at 45b, in the Jerusalem Aramaic of the Jerusalem Talmud. So this is an example, again, of Jewish Aramaic showing up in the Old Syriac. I have only shared with you 3 examples, but there are many, many, many more. And I shared 3 that were some of the easier for me to explain rather than getting into some of the deep grammar. Okay, there are a lot of other examples in the verb forms, in the adjectives and so on, in the grammar, that are following Jewish Western Aramaic, not Eastern Syriac Aramaic. So what does this mean? It means that behind the Old Syriac Aramaic version was a Jewish Aramaic version that was written in Western Jewish Aramaic, and that the Old Syriac is a Eastern Syriac dialect version of that Jewish Western Aramaic, and therefore the Peshitta is then a revision of that Old Syriac text that ultimately does go back to this earlier Jewish Aramaic version. So we have in the Old Syriac version of the 4 Gospels a Syriac dialect Aramaic version of the original or previous, I will say, Jewish Western Aramaic text of the 4 Gospels. And the Peshitta is merely a revision of the Old Syriac. So in the Peshitta, even beyond the Gospels, where we don't have the Old Syriac version, in the Peshitta we're still dealing with a text that is a Syriac Aramaic version, an Eastern Syriac Aramaic version of what was originally a Jewish Western Aramaic text. This is very important information towards our work here at restoring the original Hebrew and Aramaic behind the Greek versions of the New Testament, and getting back to the original Hebrew and Aramaic as much as possible using manuscript data, manuscript evidence to do so. So we do need your help, of course, for this project. A lot of work is involved, and I'm sharing with you some of the fruits of the labors so that you will see some of the evidence that we have that points to the fact that this Old Syriac Aramaic text that we're using of the 4 Gospels, as one of our major points of evidence is in fact a descendant of a Jewish Aramaic version. And I've said before, there's a Hebrew version of Matthew called the Dialectical Hebrew version that has many readings in common with this Old Syriac version, is directly related to it. And that's significant because the Old Syriac was lost from ancient times until it was rediscovered in the 19th century. So Jews living in the Middle Ages would not have had the Old Syriac available to them, which is gives a lot of evidence both for the Old Syriac and the Dialectical Hebrew version of Matthew that they have these readings in common that are unique against all other versions. All right, that's it for today. We'll keep you updated with lots more information as we continue this important work. Please donate to support this work. You can do that by clicking on the donate link in the video description, and or by sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org. We definitely need your help today because the rent is due today, and right now we don't have it. So please donate if you possibly can. Also, like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell. Let us know what you think in the comments. Participate in the discussions in the comments. And share these videos with your friends on social media and an email. Until next time, everybody, shalom.